Episode 204 of the Grip Strip Podcast, another trip around the sun edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, a gentleman, a scholar, and someone who attended the Roar and got pictures with one Darrell Wallace Jr. and John Hunter Nemechek. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil. Of course, saw the Roar Before the 24 at Daytona this past weekend. Got to see all the practice and everything. And, of course, saw Bubba Wallace there practicing with John Hunter Nemechek. And it's pretty cool to see that and to get a picture. Actually, first time that I've gotten a picture with the driver, in which, I've been a fan for over 20 years now. That's actually a first there. So glad to have done that, of course, and Bubba Wallace, pretty good guy too, so glad to get a picture of him and John Hunter as well. So, yeah, of course, got that, and of course, another trip around the sun with, another year of Rolex, another year of racing upon us now, and of course, getting ready to wrap up the NFL playoffs here with the Divisional Round just this past weekend.
Yep, and we're getting into the conference championship weekend a couple days after I go and turn 39, and the 28th the next Monday will be the anniversary of the last time the Niners won the Super Bowl. It was on the January 29th, 1995, and hopefully we're talking about the 49ers making the Super Bowl next Monday, but we can't get ahead of ourselves. We have to talk about the divisional round and all the games that took place. It started with the Ravens and Houston Texans, and then the Niners and Green Bay on Saturday. And then on Sunday, it was Detroit hosting Tampa Bay, and the box office one, the Tony Romo Jack-Off special, which is Kermit the Frog versus Josh Allen, which was three of the four games were dramatic. So that was good. And we'll get in all those games. We'll talk about updates on coaches. It looks like there is an announcement that's come here in the past couple of hours for a head coaching job, and then there was a couple of jobs that have been taken off the board. Also, GM positions, a couple of those have been solidified. We'll talk all about that. We'll get into the Dakar Rally. A couple of Americans, I think the first couple of off-road racing, had a lot to celebrate. One of the legends of motorsports won his class, won overall. We'll get into the winners there. We'll talk about Super Motocross and the first-time winner. Get into any updates with news on NASCAR side and in other series. Formula E will be racing their second race of the 2024 season in Saudi Arabia later this week. And then we'll preview the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Since the Roar took place, they did qualifying, and we'll get into that. Maybe make some picks even. Then we'll definitely be previewing the conference championship games and making our picks there. Josh will let us know all things going on in the world of iRacing and gaming in the sim segment, and we'll call it a day. So let's do this in order. We'll get into the Baltimore Ravens and Houston Texans game, which was on Saturday afternoon. CJ Stroud in his first playoff game on the road, and he held his own in the first half. The Texans held their own. They were able to stay with the Baltimore Ravens. As per what I've seen of the Ravens, they had slow start, but then once the second half came around, Lamar Jackson looked like subhuman, and went off, and the defense was able to kind of run roughshod on the Houston Texans offense. And injuries also played a part, I think, there with their offensive line, and they weren't able to establish the run in the second half. Baltimore kind of did what they've been doing for the majority of the season, and basically took it out of the hands of the Texans. They really had no answers for Lamar Jackson, and even when he wasn't running around like a nut job, he was able to make one of his garbage ass passes and complete them. So the soon to be 2-time MVP will now host for the first time in his career championship game, AFC championship game in their house. And he'll have an opponent that is familiar to many, of course, and we'll get into that later. But I mean, CJ Stroud, Houston Texans, I know it was definitely at the expense of your boys, Josh, but you've been able to see them twice this year. You've kind of been able to see the growth there with the Houston Texans. The fact that they stayed with the Ravens for a half, which I think is seemingly a regular trend, speaks a lot to what the potential is probably for that franchise and that organization long term, because of all the young talent they have there.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, but in the end, though, it was Baltimore, and they've been the best team in the NFL this year, and they're one win away from going to the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Houston, it's just a young talent that they have all around. You know, you have CJ Stroud, who's just, I think, been coached at an elite level this year. I mean, I think, DeMeco Ryans, 2 years, after the Houston, they've had coaching changes the last 2 years, and DeMeco Ryans comes in and he's done a phenomenal job coaching. And, I think his coaching career has showed, and him being a former player, he knows how to get the most out of these players and everything. And the offense that they run, it's derivative of the San Francisco Shanahan offense. So I think that's a really good fit for Stroud as well. And of course, they had injuries on the wide receiver end this year. Tank Dell was really good in the regular season, and he got hurt towards the end there. So would have liked to have had him back, I'm sure, for this playoff game. But Stroud was able to make it work in the wild card game against the Browns. And then, I think this game, I think the Ravens were just a little bit too much for the Texans overall. They just weren't able to match up with them completely on defense. I mean, they hung around there in the first half, so it was a little bit interesting, but the Ravens just had a little bit more juice there in the second half, and gotta give them credit though. And of course, the Texans, at the one touchdown that they did score was a punt return touchdown. So it was, even for the offense, it was hard for them to score outside of that one field goal that they had early in the game. So the Ravens, of course, I think they're the best team in the NFL currently. I think defensively, they've stood out the entire season. Offensively, of course, Lamar Jackson has just evolved his game, beyond what he has done in the past. He's still running quarterback, but he's balanced the running with the passing, and he's evolved his game to be a more complete passer than he's ever been in his entire career. And, I think you have to give a lot of credit to their offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, of course, came from University of Georgia. So, I think he's a really good offensive coach, and definitely has extracted a lot out of him. And plus, I think they've made a lot of investments in the wide receiver position this offseason. Talk about Zay Flowers, they got in the draft, OBJ coming back after ACL injury, of course, and they had Mark Andrews in the regular season. He got injured in that Thursday night game against the Bengals, but they had Isaiah Likely on there, who's really emerged as a second option in that offense. And of course, their running backs as well, Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, Lamar Jackson as well when he's a running threat. So really for the Ravens, they just got to take care of business here in the AFC Championship game with the Chiefs. So I think they showed in this game that they're really dominant, and I think one of the worries of this team was that with the bye week off, that they would lose some of their momentum that they have had in the past, and that they would lose in this game as the home host. We saw that before when 2019 playoffs when the Titans came in and dominated them, but they showed that they're the better team this time with the Texans. And as a Jaguars fan, you brought it up. I will say that I'm kind of glad that the Texans lost, not just because that they were, just because I'm a Jaguars fan, but just because for Houston, that I feel like Jaguars are definitely capable of making the playoffs, and seeing the team that got in instead of us, not making it past to this round and losing where they should have lose. I think that's fair. So now I think the question for the Texans is, can they sustain this success beyond this season? Are they going to be repeat champions in the division, or are they going to miss the playoffs like Jacksonville did this year, or be relegated to a wild card contender? We'll have to see. But I think they have a little bit better setup than Jacksonville. It looks like their offense is the type of offense that you want this in the NFL. Clearly, the Shanahan offense has been dominating the NFL this year and last year. So, I think that's the type of offense that you want. And plus, I have to say, CJ Stroud's playing at a really high level, and you can arguably say he's probably one of the top 5 QBs in this league. So they still have a lot going for them. But, of course, next year, games have to be played. So we'll see how it all turns out.
Yeah, and he was a MVP. I mean, the MVP was wide open for a good amount of the season, and until CJ Stroud got hurt, there was an argument to be made that he was the MVP of the league as a rookie, which is rare in the NFL, to be a rookie player and to be that good, that fast. And yet again proves the stupidity of talent evaluators. I'm going to keep on saying it. I don't care, because CJ Stroud, they were the character assassination of the guy and basically saying he was an idiot because of some standardized test that they give out. I mean, granted, he went to Ohio State, and reading and being able to spell probably is not necessary at Ohio State, but I think CJ Stroud can, because obviously he's proven himself here. But, it's interesting how that all went down, and they were trying to act like he wasn't capable. And then they were Bryce Young. They go and say, oh, well, he's good and he's no problem. He's going to be okay in the league, but then he looked like a bum the whole year. What is, and I mean, we can make whatever argument probably, and I was talking about it with somebody yesterday where, their bad organization, your bad team, everything was in a bad. So even somebody that has a former Heisman Trophy winner who has all those skills and intangibles was pretty ordinary this year. And then you have good coaching, you have a good organization, which is weird to say about the Houston Texans, but that's largely to do with DeMeco Ryans and his crew, a lot of guys that he brought over from the 49ers, Bobby Slowick, Wes Welker, et cetera. They set the tone, and that's, I mean, if anything else, like you brought up with who's set up to kind of lead this division, right now, the Houston Texans arguably have the best coach in the division right now. And that's with a guy who won the Super Bowl in the past. You have a brand new coach that just was hired today with one of the teams. And then you have Shane Steichen, who's only coached 1 year, and he was part of the Philadelphia Eagles last year or whatever when they went to the Super Bowl. So there's not a whole lot there to work off of there. So it's wide open. But Houston's got potential. That division is going to be wide open. There's a lot of pieces that have to be decided there for sure, and a lot of soul searching to be done. But that's going to be an interesting division as we go on through the years. And that rivalry, hopefully that'll become a good quarterback rivalry between Stroud and Trevor Lawrence, because they're both really elite talents, and they've been elite talents for many years in their life. So I think it would only make sense if those two guys were able to have many great battles in their games against each other. But Baltimore is on to the AFC Championship game, and then they got to rest. And the second game was the 49ers versus Green Bay. That game probably took 5 years off of my life because how ugly it was. Brock Purdy had a rough night, largely because of at least the second or third example this year of being in a range situation and having a hard time throwing the ball. It happened in Cleveland. They lost. It happened against Baltimore at Christmas. They lost. And in this case, they were probably around 6-7 minutes away from losing to Green Bay. And I think Green Bay, in a lot of ways, handed it back to them. Jordan Love played well for a good amount of the game, but in the fourth quarter, he turned into Brett Favre, turning the ball over inexplicably. You had Anders Carlson, who's been Jekyll and Hyde all year, and he's also a rookie kicker just like Jake Moody, but the difference is he's had a lot more opportunities to kick, and he has had a lot of big misses. And the kick that he missed in the game on Saturday was a momentum shift, a big momentum shift, and 49ers answered and went down the field. Brock Purdy was able to go down the field, drive him. It doesn't hurt to have the guy who should be the MVP of the league, Christian McCaffrey, carrying the ball and being dominant as he is. They'll give it to Lamar Jackson, but honestly, Christian McCaffrey, you want to say who's the most valuable player? Kyle Shanahan treats him like a guy who's the most valuable player in the league, and it isn't a quarterback award, even though they've made it one for God knows how many years. Deebo Samuel gets hurt early in the game, shoulder injury. It's 50-50 to see if he's going to play. For as anything, just for him to be a decoy, just to go out there, it might be worth it. He may not catch the dang ball, but being out there would at least make them have to go and send somebody over there. And that can open up the lanes for Brandon Ayuk, who's had a quiet last few weeks after a good stretch of games where he was looking like that guy, that number one receiver. Things have quieted down a little bit for him. George Kittle gets another touchdown. Kyle Shanahan's aversion to having George Kittle actually catch passes will always irritate me. Kyle Shanahan's play calling irritates me constantly, even though he is the best coach the Niners have had since Jim Harbaugh, because he's so conservative. And this is the best quarterback you've had since you've been the coach. Yes, he's having a rough night, but let him get out of it. He's capable. People like Ryan Clark, who are just hacks on TV, shitting on Brock Purdy. It must be the new flavor of the month to just shit on Brock Purdy because he's Mr. Irrelevant, or he's a small guy, or he went to Iowa State, or whatever. He's a hokey dude, or you had quarterbacks yesterday and the day before that did not play well. And you had guys a week before that are supposedly elite quarterbacks that look like jack crap. And you're going to go and tell me Brock Purdy's a bum. Even though he set multiple records for the 49ers, he was in the mix, honestly and legitimately in the mix for the MVP until, he dumped himself on Christmas. He was an MVP candidate. But even in his words, he said, I'm not the MVP, pointed at Christian McCaffrey. And Christian McCaffrey literally pointed at him. But Debo, you want to see what kind of player he is and what kind of person he is. Debo Samuel's sitting out there going defending his boy. Christian McCaffrey is out there going and defending their guy. George Kittle goes out there and defends their guy. Trent Williams will go out there and defend his quarterback. And Trent Williams has been through plenty of quarterbacks because he used to play for the Washington General Commander Redskins. And he knows what good quarterback play. He knows what bad quarterback play is, subpar, whatever, middle of the road, and what elite quarterback play is. The Niners wouldn't be 12-5 without Brock Purdy. They wouldn't have won 12 games with Sam Darnold. I don't care. Watching Sam Darnold play, even in that game against Baltimore, you literally saw the good and bad of Sam Darnold in that game. You saw why people know he was a top prospect in college, and he was recruited to USC, and people thought he was going to be the number one pick in the NFL draft. And then you also saw why the guy is now on his third team, and he's a backup guy. Brock Purdy has done everything that's been asked of him, and he's played to a level necessary to carry this franchise, a franchise that is known for legendary quarterback play and elite quarterback play from guys showing up to this franchise. And now he's probably not the best quarterback the Niners have had since Jeff Garcia. But he's a bum. So I'm like, if he's a bum, then I'm a bum too, I guess. A lot of us are bums if he's a bum, I got to say. If you're going to tell me, if you're going to write down the statistics he's had this year and say he's shitty, then there are a lot of shitty quarterbacks in the NFL. But hey, that's just me. I'm just a Niner fan. I'm just a biased Niner fan, whatever. But I will say, and I have said it, on his best night, this whole thing with throwing a wet ball, which considering he played in the Big 12, seems kind of weird to me. But maybe there's something there that he's always had that kind of deal with the wet ball. Yeah, it is a problem, but hopefully the weather cooperates on Sunday evening in Santa Clara, and then they win and they're able to go to Vegas, and there won't be a weather issue there because, of course, Allegiant Stadium is a dome, so a retractable roof. So the real concern for the Niners, is Deebo Samuel's injury, some of the other guys getting dinged up. The defense was terrible against the run. Aaron Jones was running all over him. I think he's still running. I think if Jordan Love had done more with his legs, they might have put him away instead of throwing the ball because they were having so many issues like some of these wide receivers. But for a good amount of the game, too, he was able to do whatever he wanted as well, which, that's the whole thing. The rust was there on the defensive side of the ball, and personally, it made me ill watching that game because nothing looked right. And it took Dre Greenlaw getting 2 picks and trying to give everybody a heart attack while he was running all over the field sideways to basically win that game. Jake Moody made a big kick there, which, the narrative about him missing big kicks, he made one to give them a shot, and Brock Purdy made a drive and broke a narrative. Of course, Shanahan had never come back from whatever deficit in the fourth quarter, 0-30 in his career, head coaching career. So now he's 1-30. and hopefully that's a sign of things to come. The way they executed the offense on that final drive. But Green Bay played hard. They had a lot of momentum coming into this game, and it speaks to getting hot at the right time. The Green Bay Packers did that, and for 3 quarters and change, they were the better team, honestly. But Jordan Love also showed probably some of the gunslinger aspect of him, of his game, and why they were in a position, the position they were in, that they backed in as a 7 seed, because they lost games because of bad decisions. And so, that's really what it is. Jordan Love's going to be their quarterback for the long term. They have a lot of potential there in Green Bay. But at the end of that game, Jordan Love looked like Brett Favre, Josh.
We talked about it offline after that game. I was telling you that Jordan Love, with the interception that he threw, coming back across the field and throwing in the opposite direction, looked very Favre-esque. The 2009 NFC Championship game, what Brett Favre did there, and throwing that game away, and that looked very similar to what Jordan Love did. And it also brings up, because the reason why I say that also is because I think, and especially as the Packers have started to have some success this year, the announcers have compared his throwing mechanics to both Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, and how he throws the ball, how they kind of torque the ball, or their body, like in the air, their feet are off the ground while they throw the ball. And it seems like Jordan Love seemingly has this trait, and this is a trait of Green Bay quarterbacks apparently. So I don't know if that's entirely true, but I guess they've certainly drawn similarities, at least in the media has. So I do think, though, that pick, though, was very Favre-esque in how he did that, and he has looked like a gunslinger. Even the game last week against the Cowboys, the way he was throwing the ball looked very gunslinger-like, so maybe he's developing that trait in him, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, for a lot of that game, it was very defensive, and of course, Purdy, struggled in that game. Of course, wet ball, hard to throw. And in the middle of the third quarter, there was one throw where he was readjusting his grip in the middle of his drop back, and that affected the timing of one throw that he missed on third down that would have been critical for them to pick up. And so that's definitely a factor there. But you talk about the criticism around Brock Purdy, or and some of the naysayers that have said things about Purdy, and saying he's not a really good quarterback and everything and all that. Well, there's plenty of throws where on third down, or even second down and plus, where he had a lot of pressure in his face, and he was able to stand tall in the pocket and make the hard throw. And it looked like at least second or third option, or just waiting for his guy to get open. And he was able to complete the throw, of course. But then on the other hand, there were other plays where he would follow up those big time throws and misfire on the same situation. So there was some inconsistency, but I don't think it's because he's Brock Purdy. I think just the weather and stuff. So yeah, I think for Purdy, it's it's his time here now in the NFC Championship game. Continue to prove the doubters wrong here, and that he can actually be a good quarterback. And I think part of the stuff that's been said against him is just because the quarterbacks, I guess the system, they want to say he's a system quarterback because the Shanahan offense is very quarterback friendly. They're loaded with talent on the offense. Brandon Ayuk, you have Deebo Samuel, you have George Kittle, you have Christian McCaffrey at running back. You have even Jawan Jennings, who had some pretty good catches throughout that game in replacement for Debo Samuel. I mean, even all-pro wide receiver Chris Conley made his one catch in the last couple of years there. So you have all these guys that are talented and makes the quarterback in other situations maybe makes him look better than who he is. But I think Purdy this year has proven that he can go out and execute the system. They had last year of film on him, and plus the Shanahan offense. They've had several years of film on that. So I mean, there's been a few games where he looked bad, but I think it was also because of injuries and offensive line struggling. Go back to the Ravens game, the offensive line struggled in that game. So, I think that's going to be the key for them in this game against the Lions. I think the offensive line is going to determine the game for the 49ers, but I think they'll be able to tough it out and everything. And so we'll see. And then on defense, I mean, they were able to stop the Packers, where they needed them to. Of course, Packers, had some chances. Aaron Jones, Aaron Jones was about to have a 90-yard touchdown run, and every time they have a 90-yard touchdown, like when they start on the 10, they have a big long run. I get really tense because I know Fred Taylor's record is up for grabs at that point. So again, as Jags fan, want to see that record live as long as possible, and maybe only if a Jaguars running back like ETN or somebody else, they'll be allowed to break that record, or somebody like, or former Florida Gator or something like that. But when it always was like another playoff game where the 90-yard run stays intact, so I get to keep that one for a little bit longer. But they had a missed field goal and everything, so just a lot of missed opportunities down the stretch for the Packers, but they could have made the upset. So there's that. So there's still a worthy opponent that I think we'll have to worry about, in the NFC North for many, many years to come. But 49ers, just one step closer to their ultimate goal, which is the Super Bowl.
And getting that elusive Super Bowl sixth Lombardi trophy that they have been chasing since the 1994, or after, because 1994 season, last time they won it. A team that had been chasing a playoff win since 1991 was the Detroit Lions, and they were able to stand up and get a win in the wild card weekend against the LA Rams on Sunday Night Football, avenge that trade in a sense, where Jared Goff was basically a throw-in, while Matthew Stafford went the other way and won a Super Bowl with the Rams. The Lions get that win, and then they go and host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They made that. It's true, they used to be in the Central Division together for many years, the Lions and the Bucs, and it was a pretty interesting game. You had both sides of Baker Mayfield there. He made great throws to Mike Evans in what might be his last game as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. You look like the guy that, the elite talent that Mike Evans has been basically from the start of his career. Other guys were making plays here and there. The defense at times was effective, but the injuries started to catch up to them. The Jamel Dean injury, I think, was a big change. That was a game changer because he was able to go and keep the likes of Josh Reynolds, the kind of keep Sam Laporta, controlled a bit. I mean, Sam Laporta seemed to be able to catch the ball and get open like Travis Kelce. The injury, I don't know how severe it is at the moment, but he said, I think they reported he's like using heating pads when he's on the sideline, so it's nowhere near 100%, and he's still able to make his cuts and get open. which is a scary thought if they actually can make the big game and they give them 2 weeks of rest. How that could be, but Goff was effective. The whole game was basically throwing darts to whoever he wanted to. In the end, he got it to Amon-Ra St. Brown when it counted. But he was, and Jahmyr Gibbs. People were railing against the Lions draft in April, and you had Jahmyr Gibbs, you had Campbell, you had all these guys that are rookies balling out, and in the end, Dan Campbell is leading this organization as a coach, and they have their GM. They have a great combination there, and it's a combination that I think is going to have long-term stability, because you think about when the last time they had won a playoff game until these last 2 games here, and they had Wayne Fonts back in those days, and he was around for a long time, and that, like, the leadership structure was there for a long time, and that cultivated winning. Not to the level that they probably should have when you had one of the greatest, if not the greatest, running back ever lived in Barry Sanders, but they had a lot of great players on that team. At offensive lineman, elite offensive lineman, you had an elite wide receiver duo back in the day. So now they have an elite wide receiver and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have elite tight end and Sam Laporta. You have a quarterback who is playing probably the best he's ever played in his career, and he has been to a Super Bowl too. But this is his offense. He's able to dictate this offense. He's got full control. The whole narrative about, is he a system quarterback? That's what people thought when he was playing for McVay. And McVay didn't really let him play release the hound, so to speak, with Jared Goff. And that's why, like, they put Stafford in there, and he's able to go and kind of have the full amount of that offense. But let's be fair, the whole entire effing Rams offense is throw to Cooper Kupp anyways. It took Puka Nacua coming around this year for him to throw to somebody else that isn't Cooper Kupp. But Detroit went out there, won that game. There are holes in their defense that can be exposed, especially in the secondary. They're vulnerable there on the back end. Defensive line is pretty solid, though. And you have Aiden Hutchinson on the one side, and he's really tough. He's in the same mold, albeit from the rival of where Nick Bosa comes from. But he's a really tough player. So that'll be an interesting battle if he gets put on the right side and he's able to go against the right side of the 49ers line and have a clear path to Brock Purdy, how that'll work out. But, for Detroit, going out there, winning that game, the crowd was electric. The game was pretty close. It was close for a good amount of it, but to be fair, and Tampa fought the whole time, so it shows, for Todd Bowles, for his coaching and the way that they believe in each other. The team showed up in a tough spot and were able to stand up for a good amount of the game. But when it came down to it, I think the crowd and the injuries were too much, and Baker had to force the ball, and that was the end of it. And but I think Baker Mayfield is probably their quarterback, at least for now. I think Tampa Bay will sign him back because what are they? They're not going to Kyle Trask. And that division, as it stands right now, is basically wide open. They've won the division the last 2 years, and they're in a position where if they can continue to build and build some depth, they could go and repeat, get 3 consecutive division titles, because the Saints don't really have a identity. The Falcons don't have a coach. her GM. And then the Carolina Panthers are one of the worst teams in all of sports right now. So Tampa has an opportunity there, even in the aftermath of Tom Brady. But that game was really about Detroit and their fans and being at Ford Field. And Dan Campbell's crew goes out there, gets that victory, and they're going to be going to Santa Clara so next Sunday evening for the NFC Championship game, Josh.
And the Lions, they've had a solid team all year. They've been one of the teams that have been able to prove when the doubters were up against them. They've had a couple of blemishes this year, but they've recovered and been able to go on this run here. Of course, last week they got out to kind of a fast start against the Rams, but then they held on to the end and they were able to get that win over Matthew Stafford, going up against his former team there. And then this week, kind of a back and forth affair early with the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield, but then towards the end of the game they got out to a 2-score lead, and they were able to hold on at the end. Late on in that game, the Buccaneers got a late touchdown, but they were unable to get the 2-point conversion, so that still made the game kind of close there. And then Baker had one more chance to go down the field, but he threw an interception. So the Bucks, it looked like that they just didn't have as much on offense to be able to go down and keep the game close. Once the game got away from them, you could tell that they were struggling to stay in it. Still fighting hard, but it was definitely going to be a lot of work. Whereas the Rams, Jared Goff was just able to continue to make throws down the field, making throws to Josh Reynolds, making throws to Laporta, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, of course, and then Jahmyr Gibbs just able to continue running along with David Montgomery, who I think a lot of people forgot about because Jahmyr Gibbs being so good and not even being the starter. So that's a good running back 1-2 tandem here in this league, which is seemingly not as common anymore, but definitely those two backs have been really good in this game. Of course, defensively, you got Brian Branch, of course, and Aiden Hutchinson on defense. So they've really got a good defensive line there in Detroit, and that's going to be an issue for the 49ers, but I think they're going to hold on. But the Lions, they were able to get pressure on Baker Mayfield throughout that game. Baker had a couple of throws that avoided the pressure, but in the end, I think he just wasn't able to stay as protected as what he needed to be. And Jared Goff, was able to stay relatively clean throughout that game. But it was a close game in the first half, but in the second half they just pulled away from them there. So the Lions, the dream season continues, and now we get to see if they'll move on and get to the Super Bowl. Obviously, they're the one team that's never been to the Super Bowl, so now we'll see if they can finally make their first ever appearance.
And there would be plenty of fans in Detroit losing their shit if that happened. Whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It might be there'd be like that movie with I'm forgetting the name of the movie, The Hangover. Yeah, it might be just like The Hangover if Detroit somehow or another, if they're able to go out there and beat the Niners on the road and get to the Super Bowl. So after all of that, we get to the last game, a rivalry that has existed over the past few years, not just in the postseason, but in the regular season. The Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills, and Bills hosting Kansas City and Kermit the Frog. Travis Kelce and his girlfriend showing up there Jason Kelsey going tops in the suite after one of the first touchdown that Travis scored. It was an interesting game. It was a back and forth game for a good amount of it. It was, I think Buffalo in the end, they were leading at halftime, but the momentum shifted at the start of the second half with Kansas City basically driving down the field with ease. And that might have been the best the Kansas City offense has looked all year. Patrick Mahomes, Kermit the Frog, looking like the two-time MVP and two-time Super Bowl champion and face of the league that he is. Being able to get the ball out to different people. MVS had a solid game. Kelsey looked like he was awake for the first time in months. Even with some of the issues on the offensive line that have been there the whole year, when you have a guy like Isaiah Pacheco who runs like an absolute battering ram and a wrecking ball, that's going to be hard to stop. And Buffalo really had no answer for the running game of the Chiefs. And then when you add Kermy there too, doing what he does, it's a bad situation. Buffalo started losing players. They only suited up 4 linebackers. One of them went down. Secondary started having issues too. You can't have anything going wrong against Kermit the Frog and expect to get away with it. Or Andrew Ryad, the way they call game. And in the end, the Kansas City defense has been the better half of the team for the majority of this year. And they showed up late in the game and held Josh Allen down. He had a solid game. He scored 3 touchdowns, but he missed a couple throws that he should make or would make in most situations. He also, some of the decisions they were making and Sean McDermott made, especially like when he did the fake punt in the fourth quarter, that was ill-advised. There was a fumble that went out of bounds. That Kansas City had gotten that ball, they probably would have put the game away. There was a Mecole Hardman deal where he fumbled the ball and it went out of the end zone and it became a touchback, or else that would have put the game away. The reality was for Kansas City, Kansas City and Buffalo, they played that for a good amount of this game. It was back and forth. But when it counted, what usually happens, happened. And it wasn't surprising. It's pretty sad. If you're somebody who supports Buffalo, like Professor J, there was one dude that was crying. People are getting off on that with the meme and all, but yeah, if you're a Buffalo, they're talking about tortured franchises, tortured fan bases in sports. Buffalo's definitely one of them. And now it used to be they couldn't get over the hump in the Super Bowl. Now they can't get over the hump against Kermit the Frog. And that is something that until they do that, it really doesn't matter. Josh Allen can be an elite player. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But I think also they got hot late in the season, like Green Bay. But in this game, you also saw why they were in the position that they needed to get hot and basically win out to get to this spot. With the holes that they have and the fact that Sean McDermott I think has run his course as the head coach. I think Joe Brady, I said it on here weeks ago that when they get rid of Sean McDermott, which I think is more likely now, I think they would hire Joe Brady and make him the head coach, because the way the offense looks, and if they're able to make additions and solidify their offensive line, that offense was at a level that it probably hasn't been for a while, and Josh Allen is very comfortable in it. So I think that's what they would do. I heard the rumor on NFL radio earlier today that would the Buffalo Bills consider Bill Belichick? Now that would be pretty scary. The Pagulas have seen Belichick for all these years in New England. He's a guy that wants a quarterback, needs a quarterback. He can deal with egos like Stephon Diggs and Von Miller. There is talent on that defense. So it's a kind of a ready-made situation with a rich owner that wants to win and trying to fade Patrick Mahomes. He's one of the only people that's ever been able to beat Patrick Mahomes. It also, of course, helped that he had Tom Brady, but we got to see with that for sure what Bill Belichick is going to go do. But that's something that was interesting. But in the end, though, Kermie did Kermie things, and he's going to Baltimore to try to win a second road game. Had never played on the road in the playoffs, goes to Buffalo, snowballs being thrown at his head. Taylor Swift and Kermie's wife and Jason Kelsey's wife, they're all sitting in that suite, all celebrating, and they're going to Baltimore, and we'll see how they get treated down there.
And you bring up the Kelseys and Taylor Swift and all that stuff, and I'll say, I mean, Jason Kelsey hopping out of the suite with his beer shirtless, that was pretty funny to watch that play out. And he went and interacted with some of the fans too. I think he was a little bit selective on which fans he was interacting with. I don't really think you want to get too chummy there with the Buffalo people, but that was pretty funny to see that take place. But the game itself, I think the Buffalo Bills, they just ran out of gas towards the end of the game. They've had injuries as of late on that side of the ball, and I think that really hurt them being able to stop the running game for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think, with Pacheco back there, and even Clyde Edwards-Helaire back there as well, they made a lot of good runs, being able to stay balanced there. And of course, Mahomes was able to connect with Kelsey down deep down the field like they haven't been able to for a while, and we saw that with Kelsey getting his touchdowns throughout that game. And then, of course, Rashid Rice as well coming through for Mahomes and becoming a receiving option that's actually reliable for him, unlike Tony or Sky Moore there. So, for the Chiefs, Mahomes able to kind of take what the defense was giving him throughout that game and able to take shots down the field. And they were able to win. Of course, that touchdown or fumble that could have been a touchdown with Mecole Hardman's going to have a lot of people talking. Of course, people talking today on social media, I think, whether that should be changed. And I don't think you should change that penalty. I think if you fumble out of the end zone or in the end zone and hits the pylon, that should be a touchback. That shouldn't just go automatically back to the offense that fumbled the ball there. I think that's a pretty clear rule. I don't really know why people would want to change that, but I think the league shouldn't look at that and try to attempt a rules change. But I'm sure that they're going to think, oh, well, the offense should have another chance. Well, I mean, the end zone's the end zone. That should be protected, and I think that should be held as, if you make a mistake there, you should get punished for it. So I think, that's how it should be. But, on the other end, Josh Allen fumbled there on third down to make it 4th and 3, and Chiefs almost got it. That could have been game over there. So multiple chances for the Chiefs to go up by another touchdown and go up by 10 in that game, and they couldn't do it, but they held on defensively. Josh Allen, I think, played a really good game, but at the same time, I think some of his receivers, in particular, Stephon Diggs, I think he's cooked. He had one play where Josh Allen threw it deep down the field, and I think would have been the third longest pass in terms of air yards thrown this season, but Diggs couldn't come up with it, even though he had it in his hands. And for all the talking he does and all that stuff, hasn't really been able to produce as of late. So I don't know, maybe RC can go call him a bum or something like that. Maybe he'll do it on the pivot or first take or something, but he's definitely cooked. And there's another play where Josh Allen threw towards the end zone, and Stephon Diggs was open on the drag route, in that game. So he was wide open there, and he pats it up for the harder throw down the field, and might show some disconnect between those two guys. So it's kind of interesting to see how that plays out. But I thought that was interesting because it was looking like the play was drawn up for the drag route to Stephon Diggs there, but he took the harder option, and of course that didn't go through. And then later on in the same drive, they missed the field goal there, which pretty shocking for but a very familiar ending for Buffalo fans there. So, and then of course they couldn't stop it. He was technically still in it, but they couldn't stop Pacheco there on defense to close that game out. So unfortunate for the Bills. And I think the other thing you have to consider is that their window for making deep playoff runs might be shut here. With Diggs and that contract, they're like $50 million over the cap just with Diggs and Von Miller alone for next year. So they're definitely have to make some restructuring there, and they might have to consider cutting Von Miller and Stephon Diggs there. So to get off of those contracts. So we'll see how it goes in the future for the Bills. But a lot of people were talking about online the Bills, their future kind of mirroring the 06-09 Chargers and their run, and then after that season they fell off pretty hard for a few years. So that might be what's in store for the Bills coming up next, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's something that we're gonna have to see. With your Jaguars, we talked about it a few weeks ago in the aftermath of that situation, but with Buffalo losing 3 consecutive years to the or 3 out of the last 4, whatever it is, to Kansas City, and not really having answers, and they keep on running it back the same way. You can't do that, and the cap situation definitely is a big one. Stephon Diggs also, with his ego and attitude, it's been a problem in the past. It's part of why he was sent out of Minnesota. Maybe it's not just the contract. It'll be that disconnect, as you mentioned, Josh, that will go and see Stephon Diggs go somewhere else. Which, obviously, even if he's theoretically washed, there are teams that would take Stephon Diggs, even at whatever 85% of what he, like being at around 85% instead of what he was at his peak. Depth at the wide receiver position is a problem for them, though. They do need a number 1 if that happens, but Khalil Shakir really showed out in the end of the season, the later part of the season, and he looks like a guy who they could build around as like a number 2, a solid number 2, but he plays hard. He is somebody, and then you have Kincaid, who we're talking about great tight ends. There are so many of them. GK, you had what is it? You're talking about Baltimore with Andrews is probably going to be coming back for the AFC Championship game. The elite tight ends. Then you have 2 rookie tight ends who are trying to go and get into that mix too, in Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid. And it's showing like there's like and whether it's because of tight end U, which is the University of Iowa, whether it's because of tight end U, which is George Kittle and Travis Kelce, whatever, it looks like the position is having a resurgence or a rebirth with all of these elite players there. And for Buffalo, he has been a big part of a safety blanket for Josh Allen and somebody that they're going to have to they were going to build around, I think, in terms of their offense. The running game kind of went away. I think James Cook needs like they need to balance out James Cook with somebody that might be a power runner. They had playoff Lenny there, but he didn't even play yesterday. And I think that would have made a difference. That kind of grinding runner person who's been there before and has been in those been able to play in those big games. I think that would have made a big difference in the game. I mean, would it have helped them win? I don't know, but I think having somebody like that out there would have been good for sure. But we will see what happens with all of that as we go along. And so the matchups are set. AFC Championship going to be on first. Kansas City will go to Baltimore. And then the NFC Championship games after that, it'll be Detroit going to San Francisco, Santa Clara, to play at Levi's Stadium for a right to go to Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. So Las Vegas continuing the big last few months with a lot of action, the Las Vegas Grand Prix and then the Super Bowl. So big time for that for Las Vegas. All right, so move forward to the racing part, which of course is why we have this show to begin with. We'll start with the Dakar Rally. Carlos Sainz Sr., not the smooth operator, his son, though Carlos Sainz, to be fair, his senior is a smooth operator because now he's won yet another Dakar in what is the last time that Audi will be racing, at least for now, in this race with the electric e-tron car there. And he, we're going to Ultimate Pro, so in the Audi, he wins the overall he wins over Demevius. Sebastian Loeb finishes third. And, it was pretty mixed up, the finishing order. You have there Janelle de Villiers finished sixth in the prototype cross-country car category, former winner of this race. Lucas Marias eighth in that class. I'm trying to go look through here. Seth Quintero ended up 26th. The American, making his debut as a factory Toyota driver, had a lot of issues in terms of during the race, and he got penalized for 54 hours, nearly 55 hours of penalties, but finished ahead of the two Ford factory drivers, Nanny Roma and Gareth Woolridge. So, at least he did that. In the motorcycle category, which is the class that, stands out, also, Ricky Brabeck gets his second Dakar Rally win by 10 minutes, 53 seconds over Ross Branch. Adrian Van Beveren finished third. Defending race winner, 12 minutes, 25 seconds behind. Defending race winner Kevin Benavides finished fourth. Toby Price was fifth. So, Nacho Cornejo, teammate to Brabeck, finished sixth. Luciano Benavides, the world champion in Rally Raid, finished seventh. The brother of Kevin. Daniel Sanders, Svitko Nemechek round out the top 10 in the bikes. In the quads, Manuel Andujar gets the victory there. In Rally 2, Harith Noah, the Indian rider, wins by 4 minutes 57 seconds over Romain Dumontier and then Bradley Cox, who was 6:28 behind. So great to see Indian rider first time ever win in the Dakar Rally. So that's a big history making event there. Matthew Serradori for Century Racing wins the 4x2 cars category. Layla Sands gets on the podium. The Coronels finished 6th in that class. In terms of, yes, that's only lightweight prototype class. Cristina Gutierrez wins her class, so big credit to her as she'll be moving up to the prototype cross-country car category next year to be teammates with Nasser Al-Attiyah and Sebastian Loeb. So the big deal for her, she drives for X44 in Extreme E. She won over Americans Mitchell Guthrie and Kellen Walk by 36-46. Austin Jones, another American, he was up there for a good amount of the race. He finished 5th. Ranking is, yeah, he finished 5th over in that class. And then, yeah, I don't know that, go through there. Quads, Challenger did that. In SSV, Xavier de Soltera for Sebastian Loeb's team gets the win by 2 minutes 25 seconds over de Satelier. Sarah Price won the last stage in her class. First time in a long time a woman has won a stage, and so it was a big deal for her. She finished the race. She was trying to win the race and got into issues on the next to last stage. Lost a lot of time. She was within 10 minutes of the lead, had a real chance to win, but forced the issue and not only lost a chance to win, but fell off of the podium. But she gets a 4th place in class. She wins the final stage, and her boyfriend wins the Dakar for a second time. So a lot to celebrate for both of them as they have now come back to America after their journey at the Dakar. In other motorsports, the super motocross class, super motocross class, trying to go and move that motocross dude, yeah. Recap, Aaron Plessinger takes his first 450 class victory at San Diego, and rain race for a second race in a row. So big deal for Aaron Plessinger to finally get that win. Cooper Webb finishes 2nd in the 450 class. 3rd place was Justin Barsha. Nate Thrasher wins in the 250 class West region. And was it Jordan Smith or Garrett Marchbanks and Jordan Smith rounded out the podium there for both classes we talk about. So the points right now, Plessinger with his win takes the points lead by 1 over Chase Sexton, so he'll get the red plate. Jet Lawrence is third, 4 points behind. Those are the 3 winners so far this season. Jason Anderson, Cooper Webb, Dylan Ferrandis all tied for 4th at 49 points. Eli Tomac in 7th, 12 points behind Aaron Plessinger. Roxon 18 back, Justin Barsha 20 back in 9th place. In the 250 category, Jordan Smith has the lead right now, but it's only the West currently. So Jordan Smith leads by 8 points over Levi Kitchen, 10 over Garrett Marchbanks. RJ Hampshire is in 4th, and those are the riders that are kind of in the mix currently. And then they're going to the for the next race. They will be at Anaheim for Anaheim 2. So they'll be there for Anaheim 2 this weekend before they get out east for the first race of the east half of this schedule for the 250s, but then also the first East Coast race will be at Ford Field. So another great event for the fans there to get into the Supercross at Detroit here in a couple weeks' time. In terms of other news, you have Simon Pagenaud talking about his health. We're ready for, and then he's not sure if he will be back. He'll be back behind the wheel. Wants to make sure he's fully healthy. It has a lot of the same sounds of what happened to Kurt Busch. Unfortunately, which is sad to hear and see for a guy who is a former IndyCar champion and Indianapolis 500 winner. You know, you got other things about how with Formula One, Gene Haas being embarrassed at the results when Gene Haas is the owner of the team. At the end of the day, he's the one, the buck stops with him. And he kept everything the same for years and years and thought things will change. Sounds like what he was doing with his NASCAR team. And to be fair, part of what he's doing with his NASCAR team now. Ducati, they revealed their liveries for the new year. And also the Grassini team, which will have the Marquez brothers racing together. They had that. They showed that. So the Marc Marquez trying to get back into his winning ways there. Looking through some of these other things, telemetry at the priority, because they're trying to prepare for 2026 to go and power the Aston Martin team. Yeah, the Saudis are gonna get into electric motorsport, not just Formula E, but Extreme E. So that'll be something to see how that all works out with the endless amounts of money that they have there. Trying to go through, Ed Carpenter Racing gets sponsorship from Guy Care to sponsor their number 20 car, which will be split between Ed Carpenter on the ovals and Christian Rasmussen on the road course as the Indy Lights champion, or Indy Next champion, sorry. I'll always call it Indy Lights because I come from that time anyway. And the NASCAR Hall of Fame induction took place last week, so Jimmy Johnson, Chad Knaus, and Donnie Allison officially inducted. Their picture with the Alabama gang, the 3 remaining members, living members of the Alabama gang, which is Donnie Allison, Bobby Allison, and Red Farmer. That's a cool picture. Jimmy and Chad basically going and thanking each other and crediting each other for part of why they became one of the greatest driver crew chief combinations in the history of motorsport, history of NASCAR in general. So let me go through some of that other stuff there. Nothing there in terms of NASCAR. John Hunter Nemechek bringing some of his personal sponsors over to Legacy. Busch Light revealing the first of multiple schemes they'll have with Ross Chastain. Cody Ware, who Josh was able to see at the Roar because he was racing in the VP Racing Challenge in an LMP3. Was looking to come back and share the 15 car with Kaz Gralla, who's going to run the majority of the season in that car. With Shane Van Gisbergen coming over here, the next person that is got a lot of interest, especially from RCR, is Brody Kostecki, the V8 Supercars champion who beat Shane Van Gisbergen for that title. He, on the other hand, is going to wait a little while, and I think probably it's in the same realm where if he can go and run off some championships, win a Bathurst 1000 or two, then he'll probably come here in his mid-30s the same way as SVG, and trying to do it earlier because Marcus Ambrose was older when he came over, and he did the full build up. He spent time in trucks. He spent time in Xfinity before he eventually got to the Cup Series. And in the end, of course, he was really as tough as anybody on a road course. But even Marcus Ambrose, for as talented as he wasn't able to win an oval race. Juan Pablo Montoya wasn't able to win an oval race. I mean, AJ Allmendinger took him how many years to finally win an oval race, and that was in Xfinity. So I think as much as anything, can SVG finally break that duck and get an oval win? Once he gets in a cup, that would be the major hurdle or battle pass that some of these great road racers of our time haven't been able to do. Got some that stuff. So that's that for the NASCAR. Wanted to run back for a second there. I forgot about mentioning this. The coaching situation. Yeah, so coaching and GM hires. The Chicago or Carolina Panthers have hired former Panther player and somebody who's been involved in their front office for last few years, Dan Morgan, the linebacker. He's now going to be president of football operations and their GM. Chicago's going to hire former Seattle offensive coordinator Shane Waldron to the same position, to go and be yet another offensive coordinator for Justin Fields if they keep Justin Fields. Browns hiring former Alabama offensive coordinator and former quarterback Tommy Rees as their new tight ends coach. Not like non-executives news, Zach Ertz is being signed or been signed by the Lions. So it sounds like he's going to be playing in the NFC Championship game, trophy hunting Zach Ertz. If they're able to get through and win the game against the Niners, go to the Super Bowl and possibly get a second Super Bowl ring. Frank Ragnow, he got hurt there in that game. Jonah Jackson, the center, and then Jonah Jackson, the guard, hurt his knee pretty bad to the point where he's not going to play in this weekend's NFC Championship game. Jacksonville, which Josh, you can go and give us some details on. Atlanta, former Falcons assistant coach Ryan Nielsen, defensive coordinator there. For Philly, yeah, I mean,
Atlanta.
I'll get through these the rest of this. There's only a couple other things here. Yeah, Philly's gonna hold a press conference with Roseman and Sirianni. They're gonna run it back with that duo. Roseman's a ball licker, licks Jeffrey Lurie's sack the same way as Cashman licks Hal Steinbrenner's balls, or the other way around. I'm not really sure which way it works, but that seems to be the thing. And Sirianni is going to come back, which, for good or bad, it might end up blowing the team up in the process, which would be great. Tennessee, I mentioned Brian Callahan, the former Bengals offensive coordinator, is going to be hired as their head coach. So big decision by Amy Adam Strunk to go and get rid of Mike Vrabel, and now they're going to hire Brian Callahan, who even in the absence of Joe Burrow was able to take Browning, and they were run a dynamic offense there in Cincinnati. So now he's going to bring that talent over to Tennessee, and whether it's Will Levis, whether it's some other quarterback, he's going to be going and implementing that offense there in we talked about earlier, is a wide open division in the AFC South. But speaking of the AFC South, Josh, your Jaguars hired Ryan Nielsen from the Falcons. What do you know about him, and how do you feel about said hire? And is there any other news in terms of the coaching staff or other moves that might be coming along the pike for the Jags?
Yeah, so I saw that news earlier today. Ryan Nielsen from the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator. I mean, I think it's a pretty solid hire based on everything that I've seen from Jaguars Twitter community and the reporters saying it's a very good hire, and they hired the right guy there. So sounds like he's a good guy based on what he's able to do defensive line wise. Cam Jordan gave him some very good reviews saying how good of a coach he was, and how he's able to generate pass rushers, whether he has the actual pass rushing talent or he's just got whatever he has to work with on the roster. So that's very good, considering Cam Jordan's one of the best pass rushers in the league over the past decade. The fans seem to like it. Based on his picture, he looks like he's been through it. So his face looks like he's seen some things that nobody should ever see. So it looks like he's the type of guy who should be a defensive coordinator. So based on that, it sounds like it's going to be a good hire, and it sounds like a lot of man defense, which might have to change up some things scheme wise. Curious to see how it's going to affect Trayvon Walker. I think Trayvon Walker is going to have a really good season. He's had a couple good seasons now with this last year is pretty good for him. So now, with him coming in, I wonder if he can get more out of Trayvon, and how are they going to use him? If he's going to develop some more pass rushing moves right now, kind of stuck in his bull rush type playing style. I haven't really seen too many spin moves or any moves to get off the block or whatever to get to the quarterback. So curious to see how that goes. But I think good hire there. One thing you should note is this was actually a Trent Baalke. From what I'm understanding, this is a Trent Baalke decision to hire or who not decision, but who Trent Baalke favored in the defensive coaching search. And from the rumors that I'm understanding, it looks like Peterson wanted Marquette Manuel from the Texans or the Jets. The safeties coach on the Jets, who's the same type of defense that was ran here in 2017, 2016, and before with Bob Saleh, of course, linebackers coach on the Jaguars back then. And that scheme from the Gus Bradley scheme and Pete Carroll scheme, which is very, very player dependent there to make that work. You need a all-star defense to make it work, which we saw 2017. Of course, the Seahawks made that scheme work for many years with Earl Thomas as the ball hawk safety there and a good pass rush and kind of what we saw at the Cowboys. So it's a it's a good scheme that requires players to be really good. And if you don't have good enough players and talent, maybe that's not so much the case as what we saw in many of those years in Jacksonville with Gus Bradley and the fall apart after 2017 and all that. So, that's kind of what we're looking for here in Jacksonville. Get a good defensive coordinator here. So let's get the ball rolling here and everything. And with Peterson versus Baalke there, it does look like there's a bit of a power struggle there based on what it sounds like. But Trent Baalke picked a good guy or desired good guy, however you want to word that. So it's not like every hire or roster move has to be bad. There's going to be at least a couple of good moves there, and it looks like maybe this one is going to be a good one. So we'll just have to see how it plays out here in the regular season, but looks promising from everything I've heard.
Power struggle with Trent Baalke and his head coach sounds familiar. And that guy just recently won a national championship and might be coming back to the NFL. While Trent Baalke was in charge of an implosion of this year of the team that he's GMing. So it's interesting, the parallels there. But this Ryan Nielsen guy, he definitely looks like somebody who's been on could have possibly been on Dateline NBC or could have been on a roid rage. I don't know if there's pages for people who are roid ragers, but he kind of has a roid rage look to him because of his chin and his beard. He's like a square-headed version of Bob Saleh. That's kind of like what he kind of has a Bob Saleh look, except he's got a square rectangular head, and then he has a triangle. It's like if a 5-year-old kid drew somebody's head. That's what this Nielsen fella looks like. So I guess he'll fit right in with Trent Baalke, because I think he has a square head too. But he's an empty head inside of it, but so be it. We'll move forward to the Roar Before the 24 or Formula E. Yeah, we'll get into that Formula E at Saudi. The first or second race of the season. The standings, of course, coming off of from Mexico City. Pascal Wehrlein gets the victory, and he had the pole over in the win. He gets the win. He has a 10-point lead over Sebastian Buemi for Envision. And then Nick Cassidy for Jaguar TCS was third, had the fastest lap. Maxi Gunther was fourth for Maserati. Mitch Evans, teammate to Cassidy and Buddy, they're good friends, was fifth, the runner-up last year in the championship. Jean-Eric Verne, Jake Hughes, former champions, Jean-Eric Verne and then Stoffel Van Dorn, the teammates at DS Penske, defending Formula E world champion Jake Dennis for Andretti, and his teammate Norman Nato rounded out the top 10. Jay Andaruvala for Maserati finished 16th. Former champion Antonio Felix da Costa was 19th. Former champion Luca de Grassi 22nd and last in the first race. So that's see how that goes. Nick DeVries, former champion of the series as well, was 15th. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Doubleheader coming up this later this week. They'll be racing on Friday and Saturday, our time. So that'll be and it'll be at night, it looks like, so there'll be night races too. So we'll see how all that goes and give you the results next week on episode 205 of the GSP. So last but not least, the preview of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. The qualifying took place at the Roar. They had multiple practice sessions, but then they also held the qualifying for the race. The Cadillac duo, both Cadillacs, so the Whelen Engineering Cadillac of Pippo Durrani, Jack Aitken, and Tom Blomqvist gets the pole by 0.07 of a second, 71 thousandths of a second over the Ganassi Cadillac team of Sebastian Bourdais, who was the guy who qualified the car, Renger van der Zande, Scott Dixon, and defending IndyCar Series champion Alex Palou. So they'll be the front row. Porsche Penske Motorsport with Felipe Nasr driving, along with his teammate Dane Cameron, Matt Campbell, and Indy 500 champion Joseph Newgarden was third. BMW M Team ALL, as Lee Diffie would say. Connor D. Filippi, the American, qualified the car fourth with Nick Yellowly, Maxime Martin, and Rene Rast. There fourth. The two Acuras for Wayne Taylor Racing were fifth and sixth. The 40 car with Jordan Taylor. Louis Delatraz was the qualifier. Jordan Taylor, Colton Herta, Jensen Button. And then in sixth was Philippe Albuquerque, Ricky Taylor, Brendan Hartley, and Marcus Ericsson there. The second Porsche was seventh, Nick Tandy qualifying, Matthew Jaminet, Kevin Estra, and Lawrence Vantor. The second BMW with Jesse Krohn, Augusto Farfus, Philip Eng, and Dries Vantor. The JDC Miller Porsche and the Proton competition Porsche, the number 5 Mustang sampling car, did not put a lap up. Vander Helm, Philip Hansen, Ben Keating, and Richard Westbrook, the full-time driver with Vander Helm, they finished 9th, and then in 10th, rounding out the prototype field, GTP field, Jimmy Bruni, Neil Yanni, Piccarello, and Romain Dumas rounds out the 10 GTP cars that will be racing in the Rolex 24. Of course, there will be more cars as the season goes on. Lamborghini will debut at Sebring as part of the Michelin Endurance Challenge races. And then in this prototype 2 category, Ben Keating, who's going to be doing double duty. He qualified on pole in the LMP2 category, which is the class that he's committed to for the full season in the Wins United Autosports number 2. Pato Award, Ben Hanley, and Nico Pino round out that crew. The Inner Europole by Piero and Matheson, number 52, with Schmithkowski, who won at Le Mans. Boulier, who qualified the car, Tom Dillman, and Clement Novalak were second. The CrowdStrike by APR 04, which lost in a photo finish. Last year in this race, George Kurtz qualified. His teammate will be Colin Brown for the full season. Toby Sowery and Jacobson there in third. Gar Robinson, Felipe Fraga, Josh Burdon, and Felipe Massa fourth. Goldberg, Paul DiResta, Garg, and Felix Rosenquist for the second United Autosports USA team. So the bosom buddies, the former teammates at McLaren IndyCar back together this weekend for United Autosports, which of course is part owned by Zach Brown. The TDS Racing number 11, Seth Thomas, Mikkel Jensen, Hunter McElray, and Milesi, PJ Hyatt, Paul Loupchatin, Matty Brabham, and Quinn in the AO Racing number 99, Dennis Anderson, Lucas Hare, and Scott Huffaker in 8th with the high class. The 81 Dragon Speed car with Eric Lux, Kiffin Simpson, Allen, and Alvarez. And then the AF Corsa car in 10th, Perez Kompanak, Nicholas Nielsen, Lido Wadu, and Vax Vier. Dwight Merriman, Ryan Dial, Christian Rasmussen, Connor Zilch in the Era Motorsports 18 car. So that's a contender for sure. They were a contender all year last year. The one Ligier of Lance Wilsey, João Barbosa, Nolan Siegel, and Johnny Edgar, I think that. And then the Tower Motorsports 8 car with John Ferrano, Michael Dinan, Ferdinand Habsburg, and Scotty McLaughlin round out the 13 car LMP2 field. Josh, were you able to get any real pictures or shots of any of these guys or see any of these drivers up close? I know you saw Bubba and John Hunter. Were you able to see any of the prototypes up close?
I mean, I saw, some of them up close. I mean, depending on which, where I was in the garage, I didn't really see too many, like, in the garage per se, because I think they're all really on track. But, on the track, I saw plenty of action, with saw the 40, the new Acura with Andretti this year. Saw the Porsches plenty of times, the 6 and the 7 in GTP class. So yeah, I was really just trying to get as much practice with the camera as I could. But throughout that, I mean, I think just saw some of the drivers kind of hanging around the garage or discussing with their teams. One thing I will say with Bubba and John Hunter there is, I mean, they're going to be in the Porsche or the Michelin Challenge on Friday, but they were practicing their driver exchange in their car, and Bubba was really trying hard to get it right. I think he was, I guess maybe he's not as quick and agile, but I think he was really trying hard to get out of there as fast as he could, and then get John Hunter there buckled in. And I think they were really just trying to get as fast as what they could, because they kept doing it over and over again for maybe like 45 minutes or whatever. But I think it was maybe only 30, but like, they were really trying to get it. You could hear Bubba in the garage cursing and trying to get as much as he could out of it. And I think you could tell John Hunter was getting a little bit tired there. Kevin Conway was there trying to help them, give them advice on how to get in and out of the car, and everything. So, yeah, that's just for the prototype, or not prototype, but the Michelin Cup on Friday. So, yeah, that was pretty interesting to see that there. But the other cars, I saw definitely plenty of them in the garage throughout, and it's definitely got to be on your toes walking through there. And got to know if you're in the right area. Honestly, I was walking to find Bubba Wallace's stall in the garage. Had to ask a security person if I was in the right area, if I can go there or not. Because it's open access and all that stuff. So he's like, "Oh, you're good to go," and everything. And think if there's a sign that says restricted, obviously don't go there and everything. Or I don't know, maybe act like you should find a team polo or something and put that on, pretend I'm somebody or something. I might get me in a little bit of trouble though, but we'll see. Maybe, I don't know if I should do that or not, but yeah, on there. But yeah, this definitely a good opportunity to see kind of who had speed, who had pace and everything. And I'm curious about the Porsches. After last year, both of them had issues throughout the race. One of them went behind the wall and had extensive repairs the middle of the race, and then the other blew up with I think maybe 4 or 5 hours to go. So I think that's going to be critical, but I think they've also solved a lot of their issues that they've had since then. So expect them to do good, but I think also BMWs, they had problems last year as well. So, looking to see how that turns out there. And then, I'm also think you got to be curious about GT3 as well with the Fords, the Mustang that's debuting there. Want to see how that takes place. Vassar Sullivan, they're good. Bosey on the pit crew there, so we'll get a lot of coverage from him and everything on Twitter throughout the weekend. Of course, the Chevrolet with their Corvettes, they're kind of doing a different deal this year. Pratt Miller still exists with Corvette Racing, but it's not exactly factory supported anymore, and they're going towards their customers to support them. So that's going to be an interesting change up there. But it's going to be interesting to see how this 24-hour race plays out, of course. And I will be there next weekend, of course. Been going there the last couple of years, so going to be here for the whole time as well, not just the Saturday only, but going to stay overnight on a rental home with some friends and everything, and go to the track and stay there the whole night. Though honestly, I kind of want to try. Not gonna lie, I kind of want to try staying there the whole time at the track. I'll just find somewhere to sleep, but that might as well just go home or something at that point. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, excited to see how this weekend goes, and how this race goes, and definitely gonna have a lot of pictures, and definitely be ready to talk about it next week.
Yeah, it looks like from all accounts and the fan amount of fans that were there, including yourself, that it was a well-attended Roar, and if it's a precursor to what the weekend will be like this weekend for the Rolex and the Michelin Pilot Challenge, it could be one of the biggest turnouts that the Rolex has had in a long, long time, which is a great thing, honestly, and proving the methods and the logic that IMSA has had with Jim France at the helm, and the leadership they had there with John Doonan, that bringing in all these manufacturers has brought a lot of interest. And then with the GT3 convergence of the prototypes, and then also the GT3 category, making it to where a lot of manufacturers have committed to that, bringing Ford back to the fold with the Mustang, and then Corvette with the new Corvette GT3, amongst other cars that are around there too. That'll be coming along. So in terms of the GT class, since Josh mentioned it, will Getting into the GTD Pro category, Sebastian Prio, Michael Christensen, and Heinrich in the AO Racing Porsche won the pole by 80 hundredths of a second, 80 thousandths of a second over the Vassar Sullivan Lexus, Jack Hawksworth, Ben Barnacote, Kyle Kirkwood, and Mike Conway. The Pratt Miller Corvette number 3, with Antonio Garcia, Alexander Sims, and Daniel Juncadella, was 3rd. Frank Pereira, Jordan Pepper, Andrea Calderari, and Marco Bortolotti. The latter 2 will be in the Lamborghini prototype at Sebring, the Iron Lynx team, but they're in a Huracan this weekend. Solid team there. Speaking of solid teams, Daniel Serra, David Rigon, Alexander Perguidi, and James Colato of the Risi Competizione Ferrari. They tied with Lamborghini on time there. In 6th place was the Pfaff Motorsports Plaid McLaren with Kirchhofer, Oliver Jarvis, and Alexander Rossi and James Hinchcliffe, the podcast co-hosts together and good friends, racing together. Hinchcliffe, James coming back to racing after a couple of years off. Alexander Rossi being a McLaren driver, doing the Rolex 24 in a GT car after spending many years in the prototypes. So that'll be a different experience for him. The second Corvette, Tommy Milner, Nicky Katzberg, and Earl Bamba there in 7th. In 8th, the second Iron Lynx, Lamborghini, Schiavone, Cressoni, Roman Grosjean was the qualifier, and Carioli. The first of the Ford Mustangs, Joey Hand, Dirk Miller qualified, and Vervsvich, whoever that is. The Mercedes, Sun Energy Mercedes, Jules Gounon, Lucas Stoltz, Maro Engel, and Kenny Habel. Gounon and Engel were part of the team that won last year with WeatherTech Racing. Alex Riberas, Mario Farnbacher, and Ross Gunn, the Harder Racing Aston Martin. Then the Paul Miller Racing BMW, Madison Snow, Brian Sellers, Verhagen, and Sheldon Vanderlinde there in 12th. And then rounding out the 13 cars in the Pro category, Harry Tinknell, Mike Rockenfeller, and Christopher Mees for the Ford Mustang team there. Ford's definitely had pace in other sessions, so curious to see how that translates in the race. The Vassar Sullivan Lexus, they're a proven commodity there in and one of the older cars in the category. See what the Corvette are like and their endurance in the first race with the GT3. How all that will work. Mercedes won last year, different team though this year. Aston Martin, the Harder Racing team, won both GT Pro and GT Am last year, so for the season. So we'll see how that all translates. The deepest field is the GTD category. And speaking of the Vassar Sullivan Lexus team, they qualified on pole. Miata, the Super Formula champion, and moving over to the Formula 2 category, making a appearance here in the U.S. to race in the Lexus in the GTD category. Parker Thompson, Frankie Montecalvo, Aaron Thielitz, the other drivers. The MDK Motorsports Porsche, Klaus Bachler, and company there. The Gradient Racing team with Catherine Legg, who qualified the Acura, along with Stina Monk, Tatiana Calderon, and Stephen McAleer, having the luck to be around 3 women. I wish I was Stephen McAleer. The Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Lamborghini, Kyle Marcelli, Formel Doyle, and Ashton Harrison in 4th. Misha Goikberg, Louis Spinelli, Devlin DiFrancesco, and Mitchell Laforte Racing Lamborghini. Then 3 Ferraris, back to back. The Conquest Racing and that Settler Racing number 47 with Eddie Cheever Jr., Antonio Fuoco. The Conquest car is Alessandro Balzan. And then the Tresari Competizione car. The AWA Corvette, they're moving up after being an LMP3. Nicholas Verone, Thomas Merrill, Charlie Eastwood, and Mantella. They were in 9th. 10th is the Inception McLaren with Shandorf, Brandon Rebe, Gamble, and Milroy. The AF Corsa Ferrari, Miguel Molina amongst that driver lineup. The Andretti Motorsports 43 car Porsche with Jared Andretti and Gabby Chavez, Thomas Preining and Hargrove. The Iron Dames in 13th, Rahel Frey, Michelle Gadding, and Sarah Bovey. The second AWA Corvette with Kern, Matt Bell, Fidani, and Alex Lynn. The Proton Competition Ford Mustang with Ryan Hardwick, Dennis Olsen, Leverado, and Lewis. The Turner Motorsport BMW with Robbie Foley, Patrick Gallagher, Walker, and Klingman. Windward Racing Mercedes, Russell Ward, Philip Ellis, Daniel Morad. The Korthoff Preston Mercedes, Mike Skeen, Kenton Koch, Michelle Grenier, and Maximilian Gotz. The Wright Motorsports Porsche number 120, which was utilized by one Brad Pitt as part of the Formula One movie that he's putting out there with Lewis Hamilton, got in behind the wheel of this car. Adelson, Skier, Jan Halen, and Fred Makowicki. And then rounding out the 20 cars, Adam Christodoulou and Rio Andrade in the number 80 Lone Star Mercedes, Andrews Ulo. I mean, when it comes to there's 3 more cars. The Magnus, Aston, Potter, Lally, Pump Alley, and Nicky Team. The Harder Racing, Aston, Roman DeAngelis, Zachary Robichani, and James Marco Sorensen. And Kelly Moss, Porsche, Trent Hinman, and Lauer, Udell, and Brule did not set a time. So 23 cars in that class. I mean, the GTD class is wide open. You're going to have to run relatively clean 24 hours to win this category. And it came down to a photo finish at the end of 24 hours last year. GT Pro, a lot more condensed, really good lineups. I would think as a wild card for me, I would say the Paul Miller BMW, because, Brian Sellers and Madison Snow, they've been in the GTD category for the last few years, but it's a solid combination, solid car. And if they can be there at the end, I think they could compete really well with some of these full pro teams. I'm not going to make any winner picks because I really don't know or have an idea per se. For the GT categories, there was, and also, or no, I said the photo finish. That was LMP2.
Yeah, that was last year.
My fault there. In terms of the LMP2 category, my personal bias, I want to see the 2-car win because of Pato Award. But I wouldn't mind if Colin Brown won with CrowdStrike. So I can hedge with 2 cars there. There's people that I am fans of, and like Matty Brabham, and then Scotty McLaughlin. So I would be happy. There's a few guys here, that if they were to win, it'd be cool. But really, Pato Award or Colin Braun, if one of those guys could go and pull it off, it'd be good. And they're up front to start the race on Saturday. And if I had my druthers, it'd be cool to see the Pfaff McLaren win, seeing Hinch win, returning to racing, or I would say one of the Fords on debut would be good, personally. And then in the GTD, it's really hard in GTD with such a deep field. And when you look at the Harder Racing 27 being next to last, I really doubt that that's where they'll be at the end of 24 hours. So, and that Korthoff Mercedes and Windward Mercedes, the Mercedes cars, they may not qualify well, but I think they're good race. They've been really good race cars over the past few years at the Rolex. So they're deep in the field, but I don't think that speaks to what they're going to be at the end of 24 hours either. Of course, rooting for Sheena Monk, Catherine Legg. If they can go and have a good run, it'd be nice. They struggled a lot last year. But when it comes to the strongest lineup, I think that Lexus has the strongest lineup in the class. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out there. And they're a proven commodity. In terms of the GTP category, rooting interest is basically not the Cadillacs, but even though I have the respect for all those guys on the Ganassi side. Pippo Durrani, I used to root for him, and he was driving for Scott Sharp and the team. I'm forgetting what the Patron Tequila team, but that one is also tough. The point that you brought up, Josh, with the Porsches is interesting. Now there's 4 of them in this race.
Yeah.
And one of them didn't even put up a lap in qualifying, but the driver lineup, very experienced. Bruni, Yanni, and Dumas. The amount of experience they have in endurance racing is relatively unmatched. So it'll be interesting to see what Porsche does. The Cadillacs have proven over the years to stand up very well to 24 hours, and the Acuras too. And now, being that they're Wayne Taylor Andretti Acuras, the Taylor brothers racing against each other for the first time in the same team. Philippe Albuquerque, Louis Delatraz, 2 of the best out there. I think the Andretti, those Wayne Taylor Andretti Acuras are going to be hard to beat in race pace. But that battle with Cadillac is going to be interesting because that's been the rivalry over the last few years in this race specifically. But you can never count out Penske, and the way that the BMW team ran late in the year they're going to be competitive for sure. So it could be right down to the wire at the end of 24 hours with this class. I think the being able to make it is as much to do with what's going to happen with this category. Let's get on to the NFL Conference Championship preview and picks. First off, of course, is the AFC Championship game. Josh and Baltimore hosting Kermit the Frog and the Kansas City Chiefs. Will the Chiefs make their fourth Super Bowl in 5 years? Or will the Baltimore Ravens get back to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2012? And Lamar Jackson, who will be getting the MVP trophy in a couple weeks' time at NFL Honors, will he be busy that particular week?
It's going to be interesting. And I'm going to go with the Ravens here. I think the Chiefs, for as good as they've been, I think they just don't have quite enough on offense to be able to overmatch the Ravens. The Ravens defense has pretty much been able to stop anybody throughout the year, and Mike McDonald probably should be a head coach somewhere or something, and based on the job he's done with the defensive side of Baltimore. So it's going to be tough for Patrick Mahomes to go up against this defense, and I think, running wise, I think Baltimore can run the ball better than Kansas City, so it's going to be tough for Mahomes. So I'm going to go with the Ravens here, and I think their offense, like we said earlier, is very dynamic and I think can go up even against the Chiefs defense, which is also very tough with Steve Spagnuolo's scheme that they have running up there. L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones, two very good defensive players there, and everything. So I think the Ravens will come out with the win here in Baltimore. I think home field advantage to them hosting an AFC Championship game for the first time in a long time. I think is I don't think they've ever hosted the AFC Championship game as the Ravens. So you have to go back to the days of the Baltimore Colts when the last time that they had an AFC Championship game in Baltimore. So I think that city's going to be very excited to be able to send off that team to go to the Super Bowl. So I picked the Ravens here, although I will say cynically, if the Chiefs were to win and go to the Super Bowl, the Taylor Swift factor, I only bring this up because of her massive fan base and, with the questionable officiating this year with the NFL, and a lot of people talking about the NFL being rigged, maybe the Swifties can put the heat on the NFL and get them to really light up the league on fire in terms of officiating. If that goes bad, which it's going to be in Vegas, we already know it's going to be a very sus game there. So, that's a very cynical rooting interest if that does happen. But I think football wise, I think I'd rather see the Ravens go to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2012.
Yeah, I think honestly that is that makes most sense based on the way they've played this year. And, with the guy who is going to be the MVP of the league, Lamar Jackson's progression this year. Mark Andrews, it seems like rumors are out there that he's going to come back after however many weeks on the injured list. So that's his number one target, Lamar Jackson. And it would be a battle of two of the best tight ends in the league. Isaiah Likely, as you mentioned, has emerged as a great talent. So it's talking about how tight ends have all of a sudden become a thing again. Be a great battle that way. But for some reason, I'm willing to go the other way, and it's because picking against Patrick Mahomes just doesn't really. I can't do it here for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I don't like Lamar Jackson. Maybe it's because I don't like the Baltimore Ravens. But it also it's Patrick Mahomes, and he's gone out and done stuff that people didn't think was possible. He's also gone out there and proven people wrong over time through his whole career, and he is the face of the league. You talk about questionable officiating. If there's a guy that gets calls more than anybody in the NFL, his name is Patrick Mahomes. You got all those stupid, goofy State Farm commercials with him and Andrew Ryad and Mahato, Taylor Swift's boyfriend. He finally came out of hibernation after about 2 months of sucking. If Travis Kelce is able to and they're able to dictate the game with Travis Kelce, they're hard to stop. And talking about the running game, Isaiah Pacheco, outside of Christian McCaffrey, I think right now is the second best running back in the playoffs right now. He did it last year. He was a big part of why the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl. The New Jersey product, the Rutgers guy, a 6th-round draft pick, showing yet again, goes great with this evaluation of talent because he doesn't have the measurables. He's goes as a 6th-round draft pick, but the guy runs like a bull. And if they're able to go and make that Baltimore Ravens defense kind of give them a battle there, I think Kansas City goes out there and pulls the upset and gets the win and goes to yet another Super Bowl under the Mahomes Reed regime. So Kansas City over Baltimore. The NFC Championship game will be Detroit at San Francisco. Josh, what are you thinking here? I mean, Detroit has got so much they've had a lot of momentum, a lot of positive vibes. You have Dan Campbell, a former player, Brad Holmes, the GM. It's a matchup. I mean, even with that leadership structure, that coach GM relationship, two of the best examples of great relationships in the Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and also the Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. They're trying to get to the Super Bowl for the second time, the 49ers, since this regime took over. They were the number 1 seed when they did it back in 2019. They're a number 1 seed again. You have Christian McCaffrey, who is honestly, in my opinion, the MVP of the league. He has played at lights out the whole entire year. It has been absolutely ridiculous. And he's going to be the X factor, I think, at the end of the day. Detroit has a lot of great players, skill position players, and they have a good running game with a two-headed monster. They have one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and Jared Goff is probably playing at the best that he ever has played. And he's a former number 1 overall pick, too. And he made a Super Bowl. But in the end, I don't think Detroit can stop Christian McCaffrey. And if they're able to get him going and they're able to dictate with Christian McCaffrey, then Brock Purdy's going to be able to dictate the passing game. The linebacker core on the Lions is suspect. George Kittle can expose that. And if Kyle Shanahan decides to throw to him, which seems to always be a question. And then the cornerbacks are somewhat of, CJ Gardner-Johnson's more talk than actually play. Branch is a good player, though. Safety, whatever. So, I mean, I think Ayuk has been quiet for the last few weeks. I think this is a time where he could show up. And then when it comes to the other side, you saw what Big Play Dre did last week. Fred Warner, due to have a big one, and put him on his back. And the defensive line, Nicholas John Bosa and Chase Young, they were trying to get to the quarterback. They weren't successful last week. Jared Goff is more susceptible to getting sacked and turning the ball over. He hasn't done that so far this postseason, really. If they're able to go and get to him and hit him, it could be the difference in the game. But whatever you want to say, bias, whatever, I say the 49ers go and make it to the Super Bowl. What say you, Josh?
I have to agree with you. The 49ers go to the Super Bowl here and defeat the Detroit Lions. I mean, it's been a nice run for Detroit, but I think, in the elements out in San Francisco, particularly this time of the year, we saw it this past weekend. I mean, they are a tough team, but I just don't know if Jared Goff will be able to survive in that environment. So, and obviously, I think Brock Purdy's very used to it and everything. So, I think it's going to be San Francisco winning over Detroit. It's going to be an interesting game. Of course, I think it's going to be a very, very physical game on both sides of the ball. I don't expect it to be very high scoring until the second half. I think the 49ers are going to pull away in the second half, kind of similar to the Baltimore and Houston game this past weekend. I think the talent that they have on offense for 49ers, I think they're going to pull away. Debo being kind of questionable this week, obviously he left the game last week and everything, so going to be very interesting, and especially the mind games that the coaching staff will probably play on his status and everything. So I'm sure it'll be like a game time decision there, and he'll be able to come out last minute and probably try it out in pregame warmups and see if he's ready to go and everything. So obviously, if he's able to go, it'd be a huge advantage. The type of play that he brings to the table with what they're able to do just provides another chess piece for Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. So it should be a very interesting matchup there, and I have no doubt that San Francisco pull it out and go to the Super Bowl.
And I'll be sitting here, I'll have family here going, and we'll be doing a second part of the birthday and having the my usual football ice cream cake, which has been a tradition unlike any other, as Jim Nance loves to say about the Masters. That's a tradition unlike any other for me for I don't know how many years in my life. So that'll be going on there. And I'll probably be screaming at the TV like a psychopath, because I like to do that, especially when it comes to the 49ers. I've done it in bars without shame, but I'd rather do it in my house. My family won't understand why, but I really don't care. It's for a chance at the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens with that on Sunday evening. Josh, it's your turn to go with what's going on in iRacing and the sim segment.
Yeah, of course. I mean, on iRacing, it was the iRacing Daytona 24 Hours this past weekend. Wasn't able to do it, but I wanted to go to the actual Roar for the 24 and see that. While I was at the Roar, I actually was kind of able to kind of talk with Keegan Leahy, the esports iRacing driver for 2311. He was there accompanying Bubba Wallace and John Hunter Nemechek there, so got to hear kind of some of the insight from him. He obviously very highly ranked. I think there was one time, the first time I attempted the iRacing Indy 500 in 2021, I think he was in, or it may have been 2022, he was in the split ahead of me. I think I was in second split and he was in first split, so interesting there, but kind of got to hear some of his insight on iRacing. Hasn't been participating officially in iRacing lately, but kind of doing private league stuff, so don't blame him there. And kind of hearing his insight and what it takes to do the iRacing Road to Pro series and all that stuff. So it's kind of cool to see that. There was another fan that was there while we were waiting for Bubba Wallace and everybody to get done. He was freaking out over Keegan Leahy more than he was over Bubba Wallace, because obviously, iRacing people and everything like that. And that was like, once he said Keegan Leahy, he's like, oh, I know who that is. So I didn't recognize him at first, but once it was pointed out to me, I was like, oh, I know who that is. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But the iRacing 24 at Daytona, obviously, Max Verstappen was in the top split, and his team Redline Racing won the GTD class in there. They didn't participate in prototypes, but they went GTD, and Max Verstappen, I think they did a lot of bump drafting and slipstreaming their way to the win, and in that race. I think Team Redline was 1-2, and also notable, Augustin Canapino was with the Williams Esports GTP team that won overall in top split. So I guess, yeah, real life racers having their influence there. Saw Jimmy Broadbent's stream, and I think they finished 7th in their split. I don't know if they were in top split or not, but his team finished in 7th and everything. Saw bunch of shenanigans throughout the 24 hours, people getting taken out, lots of driving error and stuff like that. There's, I think the team, I don't know if you saw this or not, Alanis King, motorsports journalist, her husband, competing in the 24 hours, and I guess somebody that they were racing against took them out, and they were not happy about it, and everything. So that's kind of shenanigans that go on sometimes in that. Saw some other stuff on Reddit and elsewhere where people got crashed out or taken out, or somebody like spun out in front of the pit exit and then turned around right back onto the racing line and took out a GTP car. So, that's a lot of shenanigans that can happen in the 24 hours and stuff. So, you just hope to make it to the end, obviously, in the real life, but it sucked to get taken out so early or even so late in the event. So that's interesting. And also, I did see one thing on Reddit. Apparently, one guy, you can't do this, but one guy actually was able to go the entire 24 hours on his own, and technically won his split, but it doesn't count because iRacing will give you a penalty because it's supposed to be a team race, but he was able to complete the entire 24 hours and actually win it. So I guess you don't have to do driver changes or anything like that. You can continue on and put on the field, and apparently people were asking him in the comments what he do to go on, and he said, oh, he drank a bunch of energy drinks, painkillers, and just liquid diet throughout, so you wouldn't have to go to the bathroom or anything like that. So, yeah, kind of interesting, but I don't think I'd be able to do that. It's maybe when I was in college or something, but I don't know if I'd be able to do that now. So that's a lot of physical. Even
iron bladder is what that is.
Yeah, that too. So I would not be able to do that. But I have seen in the past, though, there's some old YouTubers that I don't know if they play iRacing anymore, but they went the full way without stopping or without, on their own, but they were doing it for charity. So I don't know if this person was, but apparently in the race, when the guy said, everybody was congratulating him on being able to do it. But of course, it's an interesting feat to be able to do, and obviously that's like the one thing you can't do in real life because it'd be straight up impossible to do. But nonetheless, still interesting to see that. But gonna try to do a lot more road racing this year. I think been a lot of oval racing. I mean, I have done a lot of road stuff, but I'm gonna try to really improve my racecraft and I guess driving ability on the road side to try to level up and really be more competitive, I guess. So we'll see how I'm able to do that. Really like being able to do GT style racing. I think that's really where I like to be on the road side of things. So gonna try to do more of that this year, and maybe try to do some of these endurance style events, especially like Sebring or anything like that. So definitely, if I do it, definitely be on the lookout for that, of course. And of course, all the regular special events like the Daytona 500, which is in a month from now. So gonna have to start preparing for that and getting my strategy and plan together for that. So we'll be in that, of course. But as always, when we stream on Twitch TV/usailor2 and go in there and see all my stuff. And hopefully this year we'll definitely have plenty of streams to go about when I'm available to do that and all that stuff. So definitely looking forward to doing that. Also, we'll say my Twitter, of course, been active on there with the NFL playoffs and stuff, and Rolex24 and all that stuff. Go in there and my Twitter at JP Huffine, and of course our YouTube page, which we have everything up there to date at Gripster Podcast on YouTube. Go in there, subscribe, and like, comment, and follow our stuff on there. So yeah, glad to be back for another week, of course, and manifesting, I guess, in a way, the San Francisco 49ers way to the Super Bowl. I think it's going to happen finally for you. So we'll have to wait and see in a week from now. And glad to be back for another year of racing, and hopefully our best year yet in terms of being able to see all the racing and talk about it and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We've had fun doing this. We're over 200 episodes now. Never thought we'd be anywhere near this. Love doing this every week, for sure. And getting for some of the changes I've done in life, of course, being able to have our friendship and also with Joe has been a great thing for my life and also for the show in general. So I'm grateful to you guys, and getting around the sun here another year. Got the gray hairs to show it and other issues, but the fact of the matter is we're here, and things are moving in a positive direction in so many areas. So the fact that this show also is here and we've got it, we keep on going with it, is a cool deal. And you'll definitely be talking about the conference championship weekend. We'll be talking about the Rolex 24 and other motorsports news here next week on episode 205. We will do an too early preview of the Super Bowl as well next week, and give you updates on coaching and GM changes, and whatever else is coming on, Super Motocross, Formula E, and other racing that's going on. Rally Monte Carlo, I forgot about that actually. We'll Rally Monte Carlo. We'll get into that as well. So talk about all of that. You can find me at PGMatthew28 on Twitter. You can find us at Gripster Pod on Twitter. Josh mentioned the YouTube page where you upload the video feed. You can go to philipgmatthew.com to get the audio feed. Also on my YouTube page, you can get the audio feed. So there are different places you can go to hear and see the Gripster podcast. So definitely like, subscribe, support us. And we're going to hopefully get more people on this year. I have a couple people already on planned for the NASCAR portion of Speed Weeks at some point. And looking to have more guests and more people on the GSP here as we get into season 5 of the GSP. And with that, for Josh, I'm Phil. We'll see you next week on the Gripster podcast. It's for me as 1 year closer to pushing 40 at that point. So I'm an old fuck. So with that, we'll see you next week on the GSP. Take care.